Okay, hey everyone. Alright, so this video is just going to be focusing on what I did and why while creating this level. And once I go over all the information about uh, the level itself and how I constructed it, then I will go into my opinions about snapMap overall and just basically share that. So, to start everything off, one of the first things is it's actually kind of a fairly common trick, but you'll notice that there are multiple player starts. I place player starts at every major sequence at the very beginning of these sequences. The reason why I do that is because it makes it a lot faster to playtest. The level isn't very long, but it's very hard. I've opted out of doing a co-op level with more of a mindset towards actually making it so you get one chance. If you die once, that's it. Map's over. I'm actually I'm kind of enjoying the idea of doing a hardcore fuck you mode, basically. And while this level, if I continue to make these, the first one is going to be the easiest of the series, and then the second one will be harder. But even still, like, I ramp up to about 75% of the difficulty of the game on ultraviolence and single player, give or take. But I started off kind of slow, but things ramp up very quickly, you'll see. Or if you watch the gameplay video that I've also created. One of the first things I do when you spawn in, when you enter the module, so that's what this guy right here is, on entering it, I start up the music, which is really loud on my headphones. Let me lower that. Okay. And I show the message that says, hardcore mode, you only get one life. That stays up for 8 seconds. So I've done a lot of polishing things, probably a little bit too early, but one of the things that I've, just as an early observation, I've been enjoying the shit out of this. Even though there's a lot of stuff that needs to, be improved, I actually have high hopes for snapMap in general at this point in time. I'll get into that after I talk about all this. Okay, so when you first start out, I made sure that you have an option on another weapon, because currently right now the weapon pickups are a little bit strange and things aren't quite ideal. But I make sure that you can get 2 weapons in your loadout. I like the heavy assault rifle. It's a pretty cool weapon. Give you a little bit of ammo for it. Kind of top you off. Now you'll notice that it's immediately visible to the player, which means that most players are going to walk immediately towards it. And most players are probably not going to be looking in other directions. They're probably not going to see this or that. I don't know, whenever I play, I almost don't, I don't even think to look left or right. So I wonder when I watch other people play, how they're going to treat it as well. But when there's a shiny machine gun, players tend to move forward. And one of the other things too is that we all, as players, tend to have radar when it comes to detecting pickups that are, even if you don't need them. So just past the smoke over here, you may or may not see that there's a health pack and some armor shards and a yellow key door. Now the yellow key door is kind of obscured. This is something that I'm not super happy with. It's kind of obscured by the smoke and stuff like that, but I don't know, I kind of like the extra ambience of having the central thingy here. I telegraph a secret here as well. You can't progress into this room through this path, but you can see into that. One of the hardest things to do right now in snapMap, which is also something that is a fundamental aspect of Doom-style gameplay, is foreshadowing secrets, things that you can't get to, things that you can't... There needs to be more tiles that have windows into shit you can't get to. That has to happen. There has to be stuff like that. It doesn't exist right now currently, but I really highly recommend having stuff that's locked off and things of that nature, because it is extremely important if you want players to add secrets to the maps, and you want players to search for secrets, or all kinds of things to play with the player. Okay, so as soon as you enter this area right here, I play some dialogue, and I just kind of let it do its thing. Also, I begin the spawning. Now the spawning, I'm using custom encounters. All of the old spawning stuff that I had put in before was ripped out. I just got rid of all of it, and I started over fresh, even though at this point in time things are a lot simpler. I have also kind of adopted a mixed approach towards the spawning system, whereas... Because, in my opinion, if you go purely with these custom group encounter thingies, if you go purely with the automated spawn systems, you are going to miss out a very fundamental, important part of monster placement and flow. It's one of the things that they kind of messed up on when it came to the later levels of Doom 4, but they really did an excellent job in the early levels of Doom 4. So the early levels in Doom 4, you will typically find monsters that are just in the map, even if they were spawned using the encounters, but some of them would actually have been placed strategically, some of them were placed in really interesting locations. They weren't all just randomly placed in. To me, that is huge. That is a huge deal. That is not a small thing. I will go into. I want to actually make a video where I actually break down Doom 2 maps versus Doom 4 maps. I am going to do that. But with that said, so the key cards currently look like shit. But if you don't do the classic mode, the key card's invisible. Another thing that I noticed is that before I release this project, I'm probably going to have points of interest and objectives. always active. There's always going to be an objective. Just to make things a little bit more straightforward, it's probably not necessary. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Like, should there always be an objective, or should there only be an objective when you don't know, when it's not exactly 100% clear? So anyway, you grab the key. It spawns these guys. You end up getting a spawn encounter, which is a little bit more complex. The music changes. It's pretty good. Okay, I gotta speed things up. I'm taking way too freaking long. Now you gotta ignore these guys. After I do the combat sequence, I like to do what's typically considered a lull. Now, a lull is not typically something that you normally do in a Doom 2 style game, but in modern shooters, lulls are an important part of pacing. Otherwise, you end up with just constant fighting, which is not. It's just not what I intended for this point in the game. So as you come in, this room is actually empty, and I make sure that this blue door here is telegraphed. I want to make sure that there's boxes here. I want the player to look left when they come in this room. And they, a lot of players will start off looking this way, but I want players to see this door. I even added a blue light to make sure that the blueness of it is visible. Now again, ignore the monsters that are placed in here because they don't show up until later on. A bit of feedback about these switches, the panels. There's nothing on the screen. Players are going to look at these screens and they're going to think that this thing is disabled. So if anybody did or anything like that, one of the things you guys are going to have to do with these panels is while this thing is active, it needs to actually have something on the screen saying, indicating, hey, you can flip the switch or something, because it's really not a good thing right now that these things look like they're inactive even when they're supposed to be active. So anyway, you flip this, and that causes an interesting sequence where I kind of play with the player a little bit. You see, there's a whole bunch of zombies in the following room over here, but there's 3 different doors, and they work on what they activate on a series of delays. So the first door opens up immediately, and there's nothing. And a lot of players aren't really used to that. Like, what? A lot of players will probably just walk forward thinking that they can open the door, and the door doesn't open. And then another door is sitting here, and then this one stays closed for a long time, and then it opens, and then there's immediately just zombies. This whole room is just filled up with max number of zombies. This wall here is a secret, and I rather than just make it look like a flat, plain wall, I actually kind of telegraph, hey, there's something maybe on this wall here. A lot of players will probably be thinking back. Originally, when I designed this secret, I wanted to make it so that near the end of the map, you come in through here and you flip a switch and that opens the door. But really, I want this to be something that's relatively fresh in the player's mind. But one of the problems when it comes to over the top Serious Sam or Spawn Wave style gameplay is that the player is never thinking about shit after a fucking wave of monsters comes in. It completely clears the player's mental palate. Like in regular Doom 2, you kill a couple of dudes, you see the secret, you kill a couple more dudes, you move a little bit forward, there's another guy, a Hell Knight, I'm killing a Hell Knight. You still have that armor in mind. But when it comes to the, these kinds of things, the player does not have memory after that point. You have forgot everything. You're lucky to remember your fucking name after one of these sequences. So that is something to just keep in mind when it comes to these kinds of secrets. It's very difficult for the player to remember. But in a lot of cases, a lot of players are not thinking about that. They're just thinking about what's in front of them right now and oh, okay, that's what this is. So there are these laser sequences here. These are pretty neat. I upped their damage a bit because one point a tick was kind of stupid and made them a little bit too trivial. You have to crouch underneath them. When you come into this area, I set up a much more complex encounter. Now, there's a lot of shit going on in here. This is scripting hell. Basically what happens is I spawn an initial wave of bad guys. I spawn this pinky demon here, right? Because when you come into the space, what you see is there's a bad guy up here. There's 3 bad guys here, and a Keiko Demon. Okay, so the Keiko Demon and the Pinky even each other out. Whereas if I had put the Pinky Demon on this side, then the player would always go this way, and then go in here, and like, where do I go now? Alright. So I also have an objective, a point of interest objective that gets activated when this sequence happens. You can imagine that in like a regular single-player game, the character would be like, you need to open the access doors, or something like that. You'd get some kind of like dialogue or something. I'll polish this up a little bit before I release it, but basically what happens is, since these spawns happen evenly, the player kind of pays attention to both, kills one, or kills this guy, goes back this way, and then the music continues, but there's no more monsters. So you're like, what's going on? Like, why is there so much buildup? And what I do is, and you're seeing it right here, spoilers, okay, if you watch the other video, it's even worse spoilers, but basically the shit hits the fan. Like, fucking goes from, like, 5 to 8. It goes from 1 to 8 at a scale of 1 to 10. As soon as you come up here. And also, fuck you, monster closets, even though I don't have to have them. See, these are hand-placed monsters, and you notice that I'm making a heavy use of them, because hand-placed monsters they're very important for setting up unique encounters, where you're actually putting your DNA, your actual... Yeah, you're putting your DNA as the designer into this. You're saying, I want this experience. And you're not just dropping a thing in that says, which I think makes I already said all this. So anyway, the shit hits the fan, but I'm pretty careful about how I set this up, though. So basically, the music is still going. It's pretty intense, but you'll notice that as the player, I walk here. If you look to the right in this direction, as I'm facing forward, because most players are just looking forward. Maybe some players are looking at this like, oh, I wonder if that's a secret, because it's just a flat wall. But for the most part, as soon as you hit this trigger, you can see on the screen, there's a lot of screen real estate. That door is going to come wide the fuck open, and there's going to be shit coming at you. Okay, so at that point, fuck, I'm already completely out of fucking time. Anyway, at that point, you end up doing a giant fight. If you flip the switch too early, you'll get the...
Presence at unsafe levels. Lockdown in effect.
Yeah, lockdown in effect, which is what they did in the single player. You can't really get to the next area. I'm not really a big fan of this part because the door that gets unlocked is over here and it's currently not very clear. I might end up actually putting an objective to like find the key or something like that. I may really get more heavy with the objectives, honestly, because it's just more professional. See, it just says door open. So you do this entire sequence. Now, a lot of players are probably going to totally miss the fact that there's a blue door right here. This blue door leads to a very special area where I'm going to do a The Castle Was Here secret and give you a chain gun and a pretty fucking intense fight. But that's for later. And after that intense battle, I put you into a lull sequence here, which is very, 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 very fucking reminiscent of Half-Life, which is Half-Life style design flow is king of, as far as I'm concerned, they are king of Valve. And Half-Life are king of the lull sequence. They do it better than pretty much everybody else. A lot of people don't even understand when they're designing these things that you have to have these kinds of like breaks, these things. Well, all right, I'm getting a little bit too preachy, but basically you go through this and you have a switch here, and then I start building things up again. There's the blue key card sitting in plain sight from the doorway, but I also have a bunch of zombies down here that get activated. And I start warning the player that there's demonic presence ahead of time, and that's basically all there is to this. Now that you have the blue key card, now you visit an area. Now you notice that the path, even though this level is open up in the same sense as a Doom level, I lead the player through a linear path, even though it crosses over already existing areas. So one of the things I wanted to make sure is that you recognize this area, that when you come into it, it's somewhat memorable. I might need to even further landmark it in some way. So when you enter this room, I want you to be thinking, hey, oh yeah, I know where I am. And that's when these guys here come into play. These guys in here come into play. They all spawn in, and basically one of the best ways to get a player to move forward through an area and make sure that they're going in the right direction is to spawn monsters, because players always move towards the monsters. Always. That's why when I was in this area, I wanted to make sure that the monster placement was even. That way the player doesn't actually decide to move in one specific direction, but rather to try and take them both out at the same time. But anyway, so you go a little bit further in, you take these guys out. Now, I fuck with the player a lot. I hope I can get this in the video in time, because I'm really out of time. I lead a player into a room that I call a obvious trap. It's an obvious trap. You look at this room, and this is actually sort of a callback to a trope, a long dead trope, because Doom-style gameplay has been long dead. But the key in the giant room sitting in the middle, all right? That trope is fucking hilarious to me. So I'm totally fucking with the player. At this point in time, any player, like, I immediately just, I ramp up the music, right? You just enter the space and you're like, okay, what the fuck, why is the music different? There's no monsters in here. There's nothing, right? And then you'll notice that not only is this key card visible from all the way over here, but there's armor shards fucking lining the path to get to the fucking key card. Not only that, but there's ammo everywhere. And what is one of the things, anybody who plays Doom, if you see a fucking bunch of ammo, you know you're about to fight something. That's how it always works. Well, in this particular case, you got a whole bunch of ammo, purposely just sort of front-loaded it all in these different corners, and then a fucking trail of armor shards leading to a key card sitting in the center of the room. Since it's so obvious that it's a trap, of course you're gonna be like, wait, okay, I know that they're gonna spawn on in exactly the time that come on, this is so obvious, right? If you pay a little bit of attention, you'll notice that there's a slight secret up here as well, a plasma rifle and armor. So you grab the key card, and rather than give the player what the player is expecting, I just go total silence. No music, nothing. And I just have the dialogue just go, evacuate immediately. And you're like, would I fucking break it? Is this fucking broken? And then all fucking 5 of these motherfuckers all spawn at the fucking same time. You just, and the music just immediately starts blaring. So it's just like, what the fuck? Like, I hope you shit yourself. You're probably not gonna shit yourself if you're watching this, but I want to make somebody shit themselves. So that's basically how this fight actually goes. It starts off with these preset encounter, and then I go into a group encounter, which is a series of regular bad guys, you know, the imps and the soldiers, and then I do something that's uncharacteristic of a Serious Sam style game is that I spawn monsters in a long distance. I spawn a big horde of pinky demons all the way down here. Now this is the kind of stuff that you don't really see very much in the actual Doom 4 campaign, because they ended up compartmentalizing their gameplay in a way that made it uncharacteristic of a Doom 2 style flow, and that's something that I'm actively working against, even though it's going against the grain of a 12 monster limit. So one of the things that you'll see me do, typically in my own maps, is I'll spawn monsters that are really far away and just have them fucking wander their ass straight to you. So these guys all spawn. Alright, I'm done with the video as well. So these guys all spawn. They all spawn in a active hunting state, and they're all coming towards you. And that's it. I gotta end this video right now because I'm totally out of time. I hope I'm not speaking too fast in the video. Alright, hope you enjoyed.